I wanted to make a quick video reflecting on some of the survey comments that I saw, the good and the bad, and so that way we can talk a little bit about the teams and things that are going on, help you reflect a little bit on what a communication course is, and also help you think about online courses in general. I'm glad to see that so many teams are working well and that you're getting a lot of great support, especially in your English classes. A good thing to reflect upon is the feelings of support you get in various places, but also how you tend to interact in those spaces. If you're feeling very supported, for example, in the face-to-face English course, and then you feel perhaps that this course is not as supportive in your goals, it's not just good to consider what is the content of the course, but also how much that face-to-face engagement really matters. There are some teams that are very clearly interactive in an online space or in a digital space, and that can be strong. There are some teams that are just really good at that face-to-face thing, and that face-to-face meeting is really important, really essential. And there's a lot of teams that really need both and really can't separate the two. And so I'm not arguing that you need to separate the two, but when you look at the two courses and what they facilitated, what they perhaps didn't facilitate, it's not good to necessarily the best way to say, well, the English course is great because we met face-to-face and the communication course is bad because we met online, or vice versa. But it's a way to say, you know, this is the thing that worked really well for me, and reflect on the process of saying, why did this work really well for me? What was in this that was really helpful? Was it something that was in your particular team? Like, say, you really were much more energized and committed when you were face-to-face and could see each other, and maybe less so when you were just texting? Or was it something external? For the example of the fact that you had regular attendance requirements for English, so in other words, everyone just kind of had to be there. That internal versus external incentives, the friendliness of the environment, these are all great things to consider when you think about communication. And that's part of why it's worthwhile to consider one of the comments that I got about how a communication course shouldn't be online. In other words, why is this course online if it's all about communication? And what we have to understand, and hopefully an understanding from this course, is that communication can take place in a variety of contexts and spaces. Communication is more than just public speaking. It's in many cases how we relate to each other face to face, just talking to each other. It's the way we talk through text messages. It's the fact that we might choose to talk through a Google Doc rather than talking to face. When I teach this course as an only online course and there's no English course associated with it, one of the struggles those groups have is how much they have to rely on that digital communication and how much they miss that face-to-face interaction. So maybe some of you just prefer face-to-face communication, and this is what you realize in this process of how important it is. And that's great. Use that going forward. Say, you know, whenever I have a group project, I'm not going to rely on text messages just to get everything done. We're going to have some FaceTime, and that's okay. Or maybe you say, you know what, we were great in digital spaces, but somehow when we were face-to-face, we didn't get anything done, we just started gossiping. That happens a lot too. So this is a good way of not thinking about what you're going to do for the rest of your life, maybe where your starting points are, where your strengths are, and maybe where your areas of growth can be. And when we talk about areas of growth, it's good to think about your academic performance in an I course. And this is also a good way of thinking about what will make an I course that works well for you in the future. If some of you were having a hard time remembering due dates, especially when things were due on different days, this might be a good way of thinking not just about your time management practices, but maybe what works well for you as an I course. There are some students who are really effective at managing their own time in a particular way. In other words, they do not procrastinate. They never do things at the last minute. And so maybe having things all due on one day makes it easier to remember, and they're still able to spread things out enough so they can get a good learning experience. But sometimes if students feel like, well, this stuff due on different days, and that's why I keep forgetting everything, it's good to reflect on what you did to help yourself remember, especially once you started to forget a few things. Did you go back and look at the calendar? Did you look at the syllabus? Did you look at the weekly digest? And if those things weren't helpful to you, it's asking what would be helpful to you. And it's also asking a good question of what is in the course that was helpful to me that wasn't working, but also what did I do to change my habits once I started forgetting things? What did I do differently? Did I ask the teacher for help? Did I go to tutoring? Did I write things down in a physical external planner? What did I do differently to help myself learn better? Because sometimes if we sit around and do nothing and nothing changes, that's pretty much what we can expect to have happen. There are a lot of advisors who don't generally recommend first-year students take I courses, in large part because they want students to develop those time management skills and discipline in a face-to-face environment. But one of the challenges some of those students have once they leave and do their I course the first time in the sophomore years, they haven't developed those skills either. One of the things that an I course can teach us very early on is how reliant we are on some of those small reminders. How reliant we are on seeing other students working on something or asking us about, hey, how's your paper going? Or just being in the physical class keeps those classes in mind. It might be really easy to remember those English assignments, even if you're not checking your syllabus and everything else, because you have to go to that class twice a week. But it was easier to forget those communication assignments because, well, there wasn't someone tapping you on the shoulder every day or every other day or 2 days a week to say, hey, do this thing. So in some cases, you were reliant on other people, or you were reliant on yourself, or you were reliant on the technology. So it's good to think about these things as a practice going forward. Again, one of the things to think about is that an I-course is not for everyone. Communication courses online are not for everyone. These things are okay. These don't necessarily make an I-course bad or one mode of communication bad. And it's not to say, well, I didn't do well in this one environment, therefore I should never do it again. This is a good way of thinking about these courses as a starting point, as a place to go. Take the practices that work for you and use them again. Take the practices that don't work or didn't work as well. See if they're valuable to you or if you see the value in them, and maybe try to figure out how you can modify and change them. And this is a good way of thinking about your practice overall. Remember that you're at the start of your college career, not at the end. Nothing is set in stone and nothing is determined. So keep going forward and take a look at your survey. Be sure you're talking with your groups, and I look forward to seeing all of your posters.